So just like there's a base set of issues for the building code, there's a base set of issues for the zoning code. Kind of first one that most likely to be across the board that almost all zoning situations will have is the idea of the different district and what are permitted uses in that district. So there's maybe a set of residential districts, and there might be all the way from very low scale density up to very high scale density. And then maybe there's a commercial district, and it might have a low scale density and a high scale density. And then there's maybe a manufacturing district, and then there's versions where it's a low scale expectations versus a high scale density expectations. So there's a whole range of these different possibilities, and within each of those different districts, there are certain things that are permissible uses. So for a residential district, obviously residential would be a permissible use. But there might be a whole series of other things. It's not just residential that would be permissible use in a residential district. Maybe you could put a corner store or a church or a school or any number of other types of institutions that fit into the residential context. Library maybe, something like that. For the commercial, there'll be different kinds of districts and they'll have these different types of expectations, some of which are going to allow for drive-throughs and for sort of low-scale strip malls and things like that. Other ones may be more dense and may require to have residential areas up on top or something in order to bulk up the density so that it fits more in a particular kind of neighborhood, a particular kind of region. So this idea is that there's these permitted uses that are tied to specific districts. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's the only type of use that can happen there. It just means that those are the ones that are sort of allowed, what's referred to as by right to go there. So that if you're in this zoning district and you have a piece of property, you can look up and like, what can I build there just without having to ask anybody? I might have to get a permit or do something like that, but they can't say, no, you can't build that house in that residential district because by right, you're allowed to build houses in the residential district. So, what are those elements that I can do automatically? But then there's maybe specialty requirements for certain kinds of uses. So in a commercial zone, maybe you're allowed to put a gas station, but only if you get a special dispensation for being able to put it in. So it's in the zoning code, but they don't want to just have gas stations show up anywhere because they complicate traffic and they can be sort of confusing for the landscape. And so maybe they have some specialty review before they'll let you put that in. So that would be a situation where it's not by right. You don't have the right to put it in any of those commercial zones. You would have to go through a special process. It might be that you're allowed to put something in if you can prove that it makes sense, if you can prove that there's a reason to allow this particular use, because maybe it doesn't quite fit into any of the categories of permitted uses. This happened to me a number of years ago when we were doing a project that was an urban farm, that there really wasn't any setup for that urban farm use, and we had to sort of make the case that it fit into some of the other uses. Eventually they came up with a new permitted use of an urban farm. So you see how these things, they're very strict in their understanding, but in fact there's a little bit of give and take that's built into the system, and that's there in order to allow a city to breathe, to have ways that it can change over time and make sense with the current uses. Another important idea is this idea of the setback. And the setback is really about the idea of density and creating a a sense of the urbanness or non-urbanness of a site. If I have a site and it's on a city street, so there's a whole bunch of other sites near us, and there's a lot of storefronts and all of that, and here's my sidewalk in plan, and then here's the street, and then there's the sidewalk across the way, and this is somebody walking on the sidewalk, and this is my site. Where's the front door? Well, my guess is that front door is right there on that property line. There's no setback. Why is that? Because there's a desire by the city to have the sort of excitement of the retail be right there at the front. Creates a sort of a density, it creates a excitement. you're looking out for the welfare of the public by helping create a sort of dense, exciting urban aspect. All right, now let's think of this, instead of being an urban street, now this is a very low-scale residential area. Where's the front door? Well, for that low-scale residential area, I probably have a setback, some pretty sizable setback, and my building is sitting way back here, and I'm not allowed to put it up into that front yard setback. And I'm probably not allowed to put it into that side yard setback and that rear yard setback. There's going to be limitations because the entire point of this low scale setting is to have air around, to have places for kids to play, to have a low density, because you want to have a mix of high density, mid density, low densities in a city so that people have the opportunity to sort of fit into where they need to be. And so this is sort of creating a situation where you're limiting how much somebody could build on this site, partly through the use of the setback. And so that's that sort of basic idea. When we have the FAR, the floor area ratio, this is a ratio between our overall site, so the square footage of our overall site, and the floor area that we're allowed to build, not including the basement. Not everybody uses the term FAR, but it's the most common, so it's likely to show up on the exam. And this is a way for the municipality to sort of govern what's the scale of the mass that we're going to allow here. So if we have an FAR of, let's say, 0.5, that means that whatever the size of the site, the biggest the building could be would be a one-story building that's roughly half of the area available on that site. It could also be 2 stories, but only a quarter of the area taken up on the footprint of the site, because now we have 2 floors. So the FAR is saying that if we have a set size, total square footage, if we want to go taller, we have to make the footprint smaller in order to not go beyond our FAR amount. If we want to get as much on one floor as possible, well, then the building will have to be lower. So this is a way of sort of controlling massing, controlling the amount of sunlight that sort of gets through, so that the neighbors always get some air and some sunlight. It's a way of controlling the height of buildings without giving an actual height limitation. It's by saying, all right, yeah, you can build as tall as you want, but if you build very, very tall, that means it's going to be a very small footprint in order to meet those numbers. So for kind of more low-key setting, for sort of a suburban kind of situation, I might have an FAR of 0.5 or 0.3 or something like that. As I get into a little bit more of an urban setting, it might be more like 0.9 to 1.2, 1.5. As I get into a really serious urban setting, it might be